everyone, and welcome to part 2 of this forest castle colour along, castle forest, whatever you want to call it. So this is in Ivy and the Inky Butterfly, and this is the second part. So if you haven't seen the first part yet, where we colour the castle and the flowers, then you can go and find that on my channel. It should be in a playlist on its own. So yes, part 2, and we're going to be concentrating on these beautiful griffins today. So I'm not the best colourer of animals. It's not something that really interests me because I find it quite difficult to make it look fairly realistic. But with griffins, we don't really have to worry about that because they're not a real animal, or maybe they used to be and we don't know. It's a bit of a legendary animal. So I don't really have to worry about getting it too realistic. Now what I've been doing is I've been looking through Google images, all images of griffins, and I'm thinking we're going to go with a very nice goldy brown sort of tone for the griffins. So that's how we're going to be playing it today. Now, since the last video, you should have completed your other 2 flowers because I left that for your homework last time. So your page should look something a little bit like this. So let's get straight into it for these griffins. Now, I did say a very sort of bronzy, yellowy kind of browny colour. So let's go straight to our Polychromos Ochres. Now, if you haven't got this chart, you can learn how to make it on my channel. There's a video tutorial on there. But as you can see, we've got all of our light to darks in the ochre category. So I want some kind of colours that are going to be quite separated from each other so that we get a good contrast, as we talked about last time. I don't want to do sort of 3 colours together that might not be so, might not pop so much on the page. So I'm going to sort of skip some colours, and I think I want the darkest colour to be this burnt ochre because this is quite a brown ochre. So we're going to go for that as our darkest. Then I don't really like these 2 here, so I think I'm going to jump to this one, which is the light yellow ochre, and then we'll jump again to the top one, which is the Naples Yellow. So I've pulled all of these pencils out ready, and these are the colours next to each other. So as usual, we're working with 3 colours, light, medium and dark, and these are how they look together. So there is quite a good level of difference and contrast between each of the pencils, but not so much that they're not going to blend together nicely. So that's what we're looking for. So we're going to start on this left hand side griffin. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that we can see all of it. And what I want you to do is take your darkest colour, which is the burnt ochre, and just begin by following the outlines of this part of his belly. So this is going to be the darkest and most in shadow part. And there's no rhyme or reason to this, as with most things that I do. There's not really a good reason why I'm putting the darks here. It's just where I feel it would look as if it was in more shadow. So I'm thinking if the light's coming down from here, we're going to have really sort of light parts here, and then underneath where this part is tucked under this sort of beard, it would be more in shadow. So I'm going to take that all the way up. Leave a nice little hazy edge, as I like to call it, for the next colour, so that we're not too striking in our lines. We need to leave it nice and fuzzy for the next colour to blend into. We're going to do exactly the same down here across this whole curved region. So really nice and dark, right up against the line, and then just feathering out. Also just going to make this slightly more curved here so that we've got a little bit more curvature going on. I'm then going to come right down the leg on this side, exactly the same thing. And just over the tops of his toes there. Making sure your pencils really are nice and sharp for this. I did get a message last time from a lady who says that me not sharpening my pencils and having really blunt pencils while I was colouring was sort of making her cringe a bit, because I was going in and out the lines everywhere, as I usually do. So I'm making sure to keep my pencils nice and sharp this time, as you should do. Okay, and then I also think that this part of this leg would be in shadow as well. So just going to follow the line right the way down, something like this. Maybe just a bit there on the tips of his toes. And up here as well, just following on from the line that we've made. This would be, I think, in more shadow. So just follow it around those sort of jagged zigzag edges. So you've got something that looks a little bit like that. Okay, so we'll go on with the middle colour, which is the light yellow ochre. And we're basically just extending what we've already put down. So going straight over the top of the burnt ochre that we've just done and bringing it out sort of towards the middle of the griffin. Nice and light, I'm not putting any sort of serious pressure on this, just enough that it blends nicely with the ochre, and we're leaving that fuzzy edge for our final colour. Now don't worry if your burnt ochre starts to disappear a little bit. We are going to be coming back in and deepening that contrast as we talked about in the last video. So don't worry about that. It can sort of disappear because these two colours blend together really, really well, which is great for getting a seamless look, but not so great for it sort of hiding the previous colour. So all we're doing, as I said, is just going over the burnt ochre and extending it out towards the sort of the middle line of the griffin. Same again here on the leg. Don't go all the way over to the other side. Just leave a sort of bit of a white path for our next colour. Now I'm still not sure at this point whether I'm going to be doing both griffins in this video. It depends how long it's going to take me, so I'm trying my best to make it as neat as possible and as clear as possible of how to do it, but not take up so much time, because I would like to do both if possible, just for those people who might not be sure about the sort of symmetry of it. But it really is just a flipped image, so for the other griffin you're basically doing exactly the same thing but just in the opposite direction. Okay, so now that we've got a nice layer of that mid colour down, we're going to take our lightest, which is the Naples Yellow, and we're going to fill in the bits on the legs that we haven't done. But as we come to the outer edges, the outlines here at the top, we're going to be leaving a very, very small slither of white. And that just helps the colours to pop off the page rather than going straight up to the line and filling the entire space. Leaving that white gives you a sort of 3D look, that, you know, the impression that there is more behind, that there is a curve. So it's not even a millimetre, just leaving a very, very slight slither of white just for the impression. So just going straight over the last colour that we did and straight up almost to the line. So just try and imagine that your line's just slightly further in than it actually is. It's a very, very small trick. It's very simple. I don't even know if I'd call it a trick. It just helps it look a bit more glowy, a little bit more rounded. And again with this leg, just leaving that slight bit of white on the edge. I'm not even sure if that's showing up on camera that I'm leaving that white. Hopefully it is. It looks as though it is. And it just adds something to it, I think, another sort of dimension. Right, okay, so once you have got all of your colours down, we're going to go back in with that burnt ochre, and as I said, just deepen up the colour. So right up against the line, we're making sure it's super dark, so we're using quite a bit of pressure, getting as much sort of saturation as colour as we can, but we don't want to ruin the blend or the seamlessness. So we're doing it literally right up against the line and then just hazing it outwards again. So pretty much like we did on the very first step, but just being mindful that we're not creating hard lines. We are still blending them out. So hopefully you can see that going back in and deepening the colour is just giving it more of a dimensional look, more of a contrast, and just making it look nice and rich. So the fact that we've got this sort of really deep colour in the shadows, and we've also got opposingly the white, they work really nice together, they play off each other. So as dark as you can get your darks and as light as you can make your lights is what makes a page pop. That's probably one of my biggest sort of tips on colouring, is just making your contrast as vast as you can, really. So hopefully you should have something that looks like this. If you do think that it looks a bit too harsh, again, just come in with your second colour and do a light layer over it. The great thing about Polychromos is that you can layer and layer and layer them, as long as you're not using, you know, a lot of pressure in the first instance. You can just keep going back in. You can also use a blending solution if you wanted to. It's totally up to you, but I'm just doing it in pencil without using any sort of extraneous materials. So that to me looks really, really nice and blended, and we've got nice shadows there as well. So what is next? So we're going to do the tail. That's one bit that we've missed off. So I'm going to keep the darkest colour onto this bottom edge of the tail, and again exactly the same as we did on the griffin's body. So making sure that outline is nice and dark whilst leaving a fuzzy blending edge in the middle. Again, another instance where you will really need sharp pencils, and even though my pencils are sharp, I'll still go out of the lines because I've just got no coordination. But not to worry. So just following the line all the way around. If you're sort of worried about not knowing where to put highlights and shadows and things, just take whatever artist it is that you're using, whoever, you know, whatever illustration it is that you're working on, and just pick a side. So say all of the right hand sides are going to be dark and all of the left hand sides are going to be light, and try that. See if that helps with figuring out shadows and highlights. And a lot of the time it will just sort of come to you as a common sense type thing, because if you've got things that are overlapping, like the beard sort of overlapping, there will just naturally be shadow underneath that. So sometimes it just takes a little bit of thinking about, sometimes it will just come to you. But as I say, if you're not sort of sure, just pick a side for light and dark and see how that works. So coming in with our middle colour, straight over the burnt ochre. Very, very narrow, thin area here, so you just got to be a little bit more careful. If you do go out of the lines, I would, oh, it's flying. I would definitely recommend a battery powered eraser. I use the Derwent one because you can get into really tight spots that you might have gone over, and anything that sort of gets erased by accident you can just put back in. So I definitely recommend one of those. And as I said in the last video, Polychromos are really easy to erase as well, so that makes them, you know, adds an extra benefit to using these pencils. So we have our Naples Yellow, which is our lightest colour, and we are trying as hard as we can to leave that white gap on this tail. It is difficult because there is just not much room, so do your very best. So if you have managed to colour it in all solidly and you want that white, again, using your battery eraser, just go in really lightly and erase some of that yellow. And you'll get that sort of glowy look. Again, if you feel you want to go in with the darkest colour again for that contrast, do it. It's totally up to you how you want it to look and how it looks to your eye, whether you need to do this or not. Okay, so feeling fairly happy with how that's gone so far. I think it looks nice, and it sort of has a metallic look, but it also does have a slight textured, furry, sort of fuzzy look to it as well. So it could be that it's a bronze statue, or it could be that it's an actual griffin. I quite like how that's turned out. Okay, I think that the last things that we need to do with these colours are the top of the wing and the beak and the claws. So let's just do all of that while we've got these colours out, then we don't have to go back and forward. Okay, so with the beak, we've got our darkest colour, which is our burnt ochre, right into the very corner of the beak, down here, the very beginning of the beak. So very dark, and then feathering out to light, leaving room for our light yellow ochre, the middle colour, and leaving a bit for the lightest colour. Not too bothered about leaving any white on this. You can if you just want to on the very, very tip of the beak. Going back in to heighten the contrast. Going back in to smooth that out. Again, with this little sort of knobble at the top. Bit of burnt ochre, bit of our middle colour, and a bit of our yellow. Now we're going to use our Naples Yellow just to go around the pupil of his eye. So there will still be some white left of the eyeball in the corners, but we're just going around the pupil. And then we're using the burnt ochre, the darkest one, just on the very centre. Just to give a little bit of variation in colour. Now if you find that the pencils have gone over the pupil, you can get yourself a black pen. Don't know if I've got one here. I'll just use a ballpoint pen because that's unbothered, to just go over that pupil again and darken it up. Okay. Now the claws, exactly the same premise as before. Picking one side to be the darkest. It's usually the bottom side because the light hits the top. And we're doing all of the bottom outlines in the burnt ochre. Coming back with our next middle colour. Very hard on these small areas to leave room for even the last colour, never mind the white, but just do your absolute best. And again, make use of that eraser if you need to. So really there is, let's say 5 steps to this. So you do your darkest colour, your middle colour, your light colour. Step 4 is to go back in with the darkest colour and deepen your contrast, and step 5 is to take that middle colour if you need to and just go over that line so it's not so harsh. So that's the basics. So again, for this claw, exactly the same process. Now, as for the underbelly of the griffin, on the pictures that I've looked at, it always seems to be the same colour as what we've done there, but because it's a separate section, I wanted to change it just slightly, so that we've got a bit of a difference. So what I decided to do was to stick with the same colourway that we're using, but just to take the lightest colour, which is the Naples Yellow, and to go with an even lighter colour than that, and I've chosen cream. So we're using this as our darkest colour now on this underbelly. Going from the left side across, darker over here, into the middle lighter, and then with the cream just filling in the rest. It's a very, very subtle difference, but it just shows that our underbelly is a little bit different to the rest of the body. Okay, very last thing we've got left to do with our 3 main colours is the top of this wing. So again, I'm using the bottom line as our darkest, following it all the way around, just following the lines the illustrator has given. Now, if this was a complete blank sheet of paper and you asked me to draw a griffin, there's absolutely no chance in hell I could draw anything that looked even remotely similar to a griffin. I cannot draw whatsoever, but I'm very good at copying. I've been painting rocks with the kids lately. I think I might have shown you on the last video. And I've been using YouTube tutorials to paint characters and things on the rocks, and everyone's like, wow, that's amazing, you're such a great artist. And the same with colouring as well. People say, you're amazing, you're such an amazing artist. And I always sort of feel a bit self-deprecating, and no, I didn't draw it, I just coloured it. Same with the painted rocks, you know, I didn't get the design from my brain. I got the design from someone else, and I just added the colour. So yeah, I always kind of struggle with that a little bit. But I don't know if there are people on here who can draw as well as colour. I know there are people out there because I follow lots of them on Twitter, on Instagram. But I'm not one of those who can do both. I wish I could. It would be incredible. I would desperately love to be able to just think of something and put it down on paper like Johanna does, like so many incredible illustrators do. You know, original artwork that's just mine. But I think I'm going to have to stick at just being a colourist. Sometimes you have to know where your strengths lie and where they begin and end, and mine is definitely not drawing. Okay, so all I've done is do exactly the same as we've been doing this whole video. Darkening up the contrast, making sure that we have a nice smooth transition in the centre, and trying to ensure that we have a bit of white on the edge. Okay, we are done with these 3 colours. Let's move on. Now I'm going to be doing the fluffy, sort of beardy, furry bits on our griffin. And for that, I was looking at all the pictures, as I said, and it seems like there's a really rich, dark, almost reddish brown to that part of the griffin. So I was looking at my browns, and straight away I identified these 2 here as being colours that first and foremost would work well together and would blend together, and also we have a dark and we have a light, but they're both sort of very deep, rich, reddy sort of toned browns. So those two colours are burnt sienna and burnt umber, these two here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start from the top of each section of beard and make that the darkest part, fading down to our lightest colour. So let's start underneath here. We're going in between all of these zigzags of the top part of the beard. Can you hear my throat going? Excuse me. It is the sort of hay fevery type thing creeping in. So yes, very dark and deep underneath this area. And then fuzzy area underneath. So we've gone about halfway, but we have gradiated the colour as we've gone. Now we're going to get the burnt sienna. It's a lovely rich brown. Go straight over the hazy edge and then straight to the line. So we don't need to really leave any white on this. You can if you want. In fact, yeah, why don't we? Let's just leave a bit of white so it's all cohesive. And if you haven't, get that trusty eraser out. Don't wipe your page like that either, that's my bad habit. So again, nice sharp pencils, and once you've done that, we are going back in with our burnt umber, and we're deepening the contrast and making sure that that blend is nice and smooth. So only using 2 colours for this part, so it's even easier than my usual 3 colours. Okay, now we're doing exactly the same thing on every single section of beard, so just do exactly the same. So at the very top, we're always going to be darkest, gradiating to a very light tickle of colour towards the middle of the section, and then adding in our next colour. So while we're doing this, have a nice little chat. Royal baby news yesterday. I'm not a royalist. I'm not really into the royal family. You know, I don't dislike them. I don't, you know, I've got my opinions, but it's not the place or time. But there was a royal baby yesterday. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge were safely delivered of a son, is how they put it in the news. Basically, she had a boy. So there's no name for him yet. There's lots and lots of speculation. I know they're not going to call him this, but I really love the name Arthur. I've really got into that name because it's sort of old school, but it's cool. I like it. I'm thinking it's because it was actually the baby was born yesterday on St. George's Day, which is our patron saint, and also William Shakespeare's birthday. So it's like this hugely patriotic sort of British English date. And so it could be called William, but then again his dad's called William. Not that that makes any difference really, but she might want sort of unique names if possible. She's not going to call it George obviously, because she has a son called George already. But she's a bit gutted about that. She could have called it George on St. George's Day, but hey ho. So a lot of speculation for the names Henry, William, what else have I heard? Charles. Obviously William's dad is Charles, so maybe he'll go for that. But they have been fairly unique. I know there's been lots of King Georges in the past, and they called their first son George, but Charlotte's quite a unique sort of royal name. So I'm thinking they might not go as old school as people are thinking. I don't think it's going to be anything too outlandish, but I think Henry's a sweet name. Prince Harry, who's the baby's uncle, is actually called Henry. Not a lot of people know that. Yes, his birth name is Henry, but people call him Harry. So we'll see. I'm not sure how long they'll take to release details of the name. I can't really remember last time. Oh, I've gone too far with that. Can't remember last time how long it took. But there's lots and lots of traditions to be followed when it comes to the royal family. So yesterday when the baby was born, it always has to be the Queen that's the first to know. So Daddy has to step out of the delivery room, ring the Queen on an encrypted phone and tell her. So she has to be the first to know outside of the delivery room. And then they have to put the details of the birth onto like a picture, like they have to write it out, print it out and put it in a photo frame, and then that gets put on an easel outside of Buckingham Palace so people can just walk up and see the details. That has to be done first before any media. And then obviously Kate, the mummy, has to come and walk out onto the front steps of the hospital with the baby for all the photographers that are there. Do a little wave, let everyone get a glimpse of the new prince, and then back inside or home, depending on the circumstances. I think she went straight home yesterday. So lots of royal protocol to be followed. Okay, now that we have, oh, we've got this massive section of beard here that I've totally missed. Yes. So that's been the main news. As you can imagine, it's been absolutely all over every single news station, every single newspaper. And if you are a UK follower, you're probably sick to death of hearing about it. I know that a lot of Americans really, really love the royal family, and they really follow everything to do with it and have this huge sense of pride of our royal family, which is not shared by a lot of our own people, put it that way. There are people who are really against the royals, or the monarchy, the whole thing of it. I'm sort of middling. The way I see it, everyone's sort of, there's been so many babies born yesterday. Obviously just because this one's going to be a little bit famous, we're sort of focusing on that. But anyway, so now that we have come to the end of our little beard sections, and we're deepening up our contrast and doing all that jiggery pokery, we can move on to the last bit that needs these colours, which is the very first layer of feathers on the wing. Whoops. And what we're going to do is we're going to follow the inside line with the darkest colour, which is the burnt umber. Follow that line very nice and deep and dark. Gone straight over the line there. Thank God for these battery erasers, they're amazing. Straight over, following the line. And then feathering out the colour toward the centre of each feather. Okay, so something a little bit like that. Going in with the burnt sienna and leaving our little white touch at the edge, just at the very tips of the feather. I think that for time's sake, I will just do the one griffin, and you guys can take the other one at your own pace between videos. So the other griffin is going to be today's homework. If you do have any questions or you're worried about anything, it's colouring. If you're concerned that maybe you don't know how do something, or it's not working out the way you thought, leave me a comment. I'll always come back to you and help you. But really, it is the exact opposite of everything that we've done. I'm sure Johanna just drew one griffin and then, you know, flipped it over, because they're exactly the same. So yes, that will be today's homework. Give the griffin his friend. I did get a comment from a lady on YouTube, because she'd been looking through the different comments on the video, and she saw that somebody said that they were chuffed that I was doing another colour along, and she had no idea. I think she's in America. She had no idea what the word chuffed meant. So it is quite a British sort of colloquial word, and it basically just means like super excited, super happy, you know, just really happy that I was doing another video. So she was chuffed. There was a word that I used in the last video, which is the word rubber, which is what I call one of these, an eraser. And the lady quite comically pointed out that in America a rubber means something totally different. I know exactly what you mean, and yes, we do use that term over here as well. We definitely do, but we do use the word rubber more than eraser for one of these. So it's quite funny just between countries how different words in the English language are portrayed. Okay, so now that we have basically filled in the top layer of feathers here, just neatening up the bottom of the tips where we've left our white, it's time for us to put these colours away. And the bottom two layers of feathers here, and also the crest and this area on the head, are actually white, but I don't like to leave anything completely white because it just looks like you've not bothered to colour it. So what we do is we come in with a very light shading and shadow colour, and I have used Cold Grey 2. And this just basically gives a little bit more depth rather than leaving it a very flat white. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up with the pencil from the tips of these zigzags here and just colour in a nice little light layer of grey. Nothing major, just a nice light layer, blending it out to white, just so we've got a little bit of shape. Again, not sure how well this is showing up to you guys, but hopefully if you've got this on HD mode, you should be able to see the very subtle difference it makes, but it really does make it to do this. So starting from this side of the crest, blending out to white as we get to the middle, and then starting from the tips of these zigzags here, again blending to white as we get to the centre. You can use a white pencil if you wanted, just to make it smoother, but I'm really not using hardly any pressure whatsoever, so I don't really need that. Again, the tips here on this part. So very quick step, very simple step, but it really does look better than leaving it white. And we're going to do exactly the same on the feathers that we've left. So basically doing the tops grey, fading out to the white at the bottom of each feather. Very quick and easy technique. You can take a bit more time with it, but it really does look much better. And again on the bottom layer, I've got to tell you about something really, well, it's funny now, but yesterday I was absolutely fuming. So yesterday we went out to the local farm to buy some potatoes, and we've never been there before. but we were told that it was a really lovely farm shop, and we got there and it was closed. It was closed basically half of the week, which I think is ridiculous. You know, just open all the time, get some custom. But anyway, because it was closed, we decided to try and have a light lunch at the local priory where I went and took those photos last time. It was closed, only open a couple of days a week. Again, we were like, why? So then we decided to try a local deli called Basilia. And I mean, I'm going to sound really ignorant and uneducated now, but the food on the menu was just, it was all weird stuff. And I know you're all going to be like, how is horseradish weird? Or how is prawn marie sauce weird? But literally everything on the menu is just all this sort of posh ingredients and just stuff, weird stuff, you know. It was just not good. So I mean, for the village or the town that particular place is, which is a very sort of, it's not posh, it's the opposite of posh, put it that way. I just thought, why don't you have any sort of normal meals on the menu? And there was just nothing that I fancied whatsoever. It was all strange, you know, like blue Stilton chutney and just random stuff. So we left there and decided to go to a more local cafe. And we got there and I said, please, can I have the quiche and salad? No, we've run out of quiche. Okay, please, can I have the pulled pork baguette and salad? We've run out of that as well. Now, bear in mind, this was 12:30. It wasn't 6:30 at night. It was 12:30. It was the height of dinner and they had just run out. And because I was just so enraged, I just walked out. I was like, fine, no, I'll go home. I'll make something myself. So I was basically walking back to the car like Thomas the Tank Engine with steam coming out everywhere. And then we got home and my husband said, I'm just going to have a bacon butty, which is just a bacon sandwich. And we had no bread in the house. God, it was honestly just, everything just went from bad to worse. You couldn't have made it up really. But we ended up just having something, you know, simple and quick. But it was just, everything was just going wrong. We might as well have not left the house, to be honest. Right, okay, we've done our sort of half grey feathers and we've pretty much finished our griffin. Now, you can leave it like this if you want to. It looks great as it is. It's totally up to you if you want this very smooth effect. If you do want to add in some fur, some texture, grab yourself a couple of fine liners and we're looking at a reddish brown and a dark brown. So the colours of this in the Staedtler Tri-Plus fine liner, oh actually we don't have any actual colours on these, do we? Okay, so if you can just take a really good look at those colours and hopefully match them if you have the Tri-Plus fine liner set. But basically a reddish light brown and a dark brown. Now with the dark brown, every single section of these two dark browns we've used, we're going to go to the darkest part, which was always the top, and we're going to flick and feather out some lines. So just using a flicking motion from the top so that we automatically get more colour at the top than we do on the tips of the flicks, and just flicking in different directions. So we don't want to go completely straight all the way down. Do most of it straight, like this, and then as you're coming down, just do a couple across, both ways, just to give more of a realistic textured look. And when you get to the sort of midway part, you can then come in with the lighter brown and continue those flicks all the way down, or almost all the way down, almost down to where your white is. And again, a couple of crossover flicks so it's not too straight. And you'll have this beautiful, rich, deep texture now to your beardy parts. So I'm going to do that to all of it, because I think that looks really, it just adds something extra. So just switching between the two browns and just mixing up your flick directions a little bit. and you'll have something that looks a bit like that. So as I said, you might want to just watch this whole thing first before you go ahead and do this, because you might not like the end result. But I like just a bit of extra texture to it. And I think fur in general, even though I hate attempting to colour fur, is easier if you do the base layer in pencil and then use fine liner pens to go over and create that fur. So if you are wondering about how to do that kind of look, I would definitely go with this route. And we'll do the same here, just trying not to smudge what I've done. Let's just move this out of the way and turn it around a little bit. There we go. So exactly the same thing on these wing feathers. If you want, you can go across that outline just so it looks as though the darkest, most dense parts of the feathers are at the top, and then do your flicks. It doesn't have to be perfect, it can be as rough as you like really. And then our bottom parts. Okay, now again, optional step. If you wanted to add texture into the grey, you can get a really light grey fine liner like this one and just feather in some very light strokes from the darkest parts of the grey that we did here. You won't need much, just a few little strokes like this. And if you want to, a few strokes on your feathers as well. I'm not really taking any time at all to do this. It's literally just for that slight bit of texture and that slight difference to the eye when somebody looks at your picture. You know, they might not even really notice that you've put in these little details, but the overall look of it will be much more interesting to the eye. Okay. And that is Mr. Griffin complete. I really sincerely hope that you are happy with how we've coloured this Griffin. As I said, there was plenty of different options on Google Images, but this is the one that I chose to try and emulate. And as I said before, because we are now on 50 minutes and that I'm not going to be able to do another Griffin in this video, please finish off Mr. Right Hand Side Griffin, or Mrs. Right Hand Side Griffin, in exactly the same colourway as we've just done, and exactly the same technique, just flip it over. Please do leave me comments telling me how you've liked this. If you want to send me a picture of your work so far, please do it by Instagram or Facebook, Twitter, anywhere that you can find me. I'm on all of those different platforms. Just tag me in it and I will definitely get back to you. Yes, leave me some comments. Tell me what to talk about in the next video if you want me to chat about anything in particular. Please leave a thumbs up for the video. It takes a second, but it really helps. I've been getting some thumbs down recently, and I really wish there was a way for people to just tell you why, or give you a bit of feedback on why they didn't like the video. But yes, if you could please give it a thumbs up, that would be absolutely brilliant. And I'm sure that most of you by now subscribe to the channel. If you don't, please do that as well. So yeah, not a long list of things to do. But yes, please do. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you on the third part, by which time you will have finished your Griffin and we'll get started on some other element of the page. So thank you very much, and I will see you soon.